Hello everybody, and thanks for coming back to the channel. Today we're taking a look at the Walkera Rodeo 110. This is a kind of a mystery vehicle from its specifications. We do know that it comes with a 2S 850 milliamp battery, which is all fine and well. But we don't know a lot about, say, the motors and the flight controller. All we know is it's F3, and if we look at it through Clean Flight, it's running Betaflight, but it's either running a custom version of Betaflight or a really old version of Betaflight. Which, if it's running the old version, I don't know why they would do that. And if it's running a custom version, I understand, but shouldn't they have customized it to where the Betaflight app would work with it? So, something to think about. So it's supposed to be 110 millimeters from motor post to motor post, but it is not. So let's check that right off the bat. So if you don't see anything else in this video, you'll know the actual size. Bring this over here, turn this on, make sure we're on the up and up. And this will be only an approximation to the motor center post, but it should give you a very good idea that this little vehicle, while micro, is not a 110. So it's somewhere, that's about as close as I'm going to get, somewhere around 127 millimeters. So it's not very close to a 110. But anyways, it's still a micro. And it's an RTF kit. I picked mine up. Mine was $189. And Walkera has done a nice job with some things that aren't necessarily just the vehicle, but they've included a nice hobby grade receiver, the Devo 7, which unfortunately isn't compatible with Deviation TX, so we're not going to be able to control a bunch of different vehicles with this. We're going to have to buy Walkera receivers, I believe. But it feels nice in the hand, good solid switches. We have a 3-position switch. Sticks are nice to use. You can see I still have the screen protector on mine. We also get a trainer port for that radio. We get a wall charger to plug in to charge the battery. If you don't have a hobby grade charger, you can use this just fine. We get a USB cable, which is a nice touch. They didn't assume that we have one. You also get 2 sets of propellers, and I think these propellers are relatively decent. They're fairly well balanced, and they're pretty tough. So as far as an RTF kit, which is typically something that is targeted for people who are either just starting on their FPV journey, or they're interested but they don't want to spend a lot of money, this is $189, and it's a very serviceable product. Let's talk about it a bit more here. So we don't know what kV these motors are. Now I assume they're somewhere around 1104s and somewhere between 4,000 and 8,000 kV. Well, 4,000 and 7,000 kV. But we don't know. It's not printed anywhere, and I haven't found anybody that really tracked down the motors. And the motors are listed as WK-WS-13002A. So it's a Walkera motor, I guess, and they just don't want us to know what it is. You can also see down here it has these motor tab, or the copper tabs, and I believe that is because these ESCs are made to where you slide them in and then secure them down. And so speaking of securing them down, they do that with a screw. So if you take an impact that's directly down on this arm out here at the end, this could be a weak point. I've crashed this. You can probably tell it's a little bit dirty a number of times, and of course, as you see, I'm still all intact. We have a 600 TV line CMOS camera, and we have a bright light right in front of it, and that's quite bright. My preference is, if they're going to include lights, is to put them on the back, because chase videos are a lot cooler, and this isn't really all that handy as far as our vision goes. It's not bright enough to really help us with the image that we're looking through on the goggles. Press-on fit tri-blades. And we have this housing. I haven't had any problems with the housing. You can see mine's still intact. I've flown it about 7 times. Not all using the stock battery, but using some of my own batteries. And I really haven't had a problem with it. I haven't fully tuned mine yet. I have heard that other people either got one that was already tuned, or they're comfortable with the tune that's on it. There's our USB port labeled upgrade port. Of course, that's how you plug in and you make configuration changes. We've got a nice long strap, and we have this little carriage area where we put our battery. It does secure it in there nicely. I do suggest that you use something some gummy tape or something to keep the battery from sliding around. But again, I haven't had problems yet with the battery sliding out. It does use a JST, so you want to make sure your batteries have that. And we have our video. I have not been necessarily impressed with my reception, and I'm not flying in large spaces, and this time of year there is very little foliage on the trees. Underneath the strap here, let me take this off. We have our bind button, so if you buy the bind and ply version, you can bind that up. And we also have our dip switches for our VTX. We have two lights. They both go red, one on the tail over here, one on the tail over here. And those lights will indicate our bind status and also our battery status. It does have a buzzer inside, and it is very loud, but the buzzer seems to come on, and it doesn't have that sequence of tones where it'll beep kind of slowly when you're getting to low voltage, and then it'll beep faster and more often when you're getting below that low voltage. This one just has one beep tone, and it does it as soon as it triggers it. So it's something to be aware of, that when it goes off, you probably want to land pretty quickly. We have these antennas that look like you can turn them, but I have yet to be able to get mine to turn. So maybe they're not, they're just supposed to look that way. They're not actually turnable. On the bottom, if you want to include your own receiver, you can see we've got a switch right here for S-Bus or PPM, and then we've got our 3 pins for our external receiver. We also have these landing pad feet, the legs thingies, and that's fine. You know, it looks good in its stance when it's down there on the ground. It gives us a nice flat surface to land on. It's probably going to be one of the first things that breaks if you come in, especially in the cold weather and this plastic gets a little bit cold and have a little bit of a rough landing. But you can buy those foam pads and then just stick them here, and I think there's like $1 off of Banggood. Matter of fact, I think I have some. Let me grab them. Yeah, here we go. So these little foam feet, you could cut these in half, actually, if you wanted to. I think these were $1 off of Banggood, and I'll include a link to them down below in case you want to see them. You could stick that right on here if those did break, and you see that the height is nearly the same. Not that it matters. There's nothing underneath here to really protect other than this lower housing. Overall, I think with this kit, the thing that's going to be possibly the most fragile is going to be this point up here. You know, it's all some form of plastic, but it is on there fairly sturdy. But if you land this on really any sort of rocky or really hard abrasive surface, I would expect this to take some damage. We do have a lot of parts that have been hitting the various websites for this guy, so repairability should be fine. I do like the fact that they've made it very, very clean, and that's a good idea in these RTFs, because people who are interested or want to buy these aren't necessarily interested in that traditional quadcopter look that's very industrial and kind of open. So it's a little bit of a different design. With the radio, the binding procedure is very, very clearly written in the manual, I believe, and I didn't touch on that, but this is the manual. It's a nice little manual. Printed in color, but not using a lot of color. So follow the binding procedure in the guide. But one thing is a bit off, and it's been hard for me to get used to every time. You plug in the quad first, and then you turn on the radio. So the quad goes crazy and beeps, 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 and then you turn on the radio and the beep stops. And then you're all set to go. It is using stick arming, so unlock and lock the motors. And this is our flight modes right up here. I only use the acro in my flight, which is down low. Acro does not have, out of the box, it does not have air mode or idle up set, so you will need to set that yourself if you're interested in doing zero throttle acrobatics. And I actually attempted some acrobatics, but forgot air mode wasn't on and had a nice crash. Maybe we'll include that at the end. I think that wraps up what I have to say about this. Outside, what we'll do is I'll set up a stationary camera so that you can hear the quad. I'll include some music that's very low on volume, and you may hear me while I'm flying it talk a little bit. That's actually wasn't my original intention. I was just kind of out there and I was talking to myself, making mental notes, and then it comes through the camera. So that's what we're going to do on the flights. Then we'll come back inside. We'll have some final discussion about how I feel about the product and some things that you might want to consider in the future. feel the battery sagging already. Wind's kicking up. Oh boy. Ah. We really got to hit the throttle hard to recover out of some of those 180s. Let's hit it. Uh-oh. Don't know what that beep was. Oh, that's my Fat Shark goggles. Now I got two beepers screaming at me. Final thoughts and considerations here. I think this is a perfectly acceptable kit. I think it will be great for people wanting to enter the market and get into FPV. I don't think we can expect this CMOS camera to really hold up under difficult lighting conditions. Unfortunately, as I said previously, changing out this camera is going to be quite a chore because it has a mount in there that is I believe narrower than all the other CMOS cameras that we can buy, and of course you can't put an CCD camera in there. The battery, while this will get you flying, I think there's a lot of better batteries out there. I spent a fair amount of time flying these batteries, which are all much smaller as far as the milliamp. We have no idea what the the supposed C rating of this is. C rating really, it's all over the map. You can either trust it or not. It's kind of up to you. If you want to fly and you want to be able to move very quickly, you want to be more of an agile flyer, I would suggest going with something like this because of the weight savings, but your flight time is going to be less. If you want a longer flight time, you probably want to look at this one, or even possibly adding a few milliamp to your battery selection. These batteries, the Genesis Power, can be had quite cheaply from Banana Hobby, but they've been having a hard time keeping stock because their prices are so low. You can find this giant power battery off of Banggood, and this MyLipo battery only comes from the mylipo.de, so you have to pay a pretty high shipping cost. So unless you're close to Germany, shipping might not be worth it in the case of this one. I think the biggest drawback from this is the antenna or the VTX. I can't be sure which one. It's either not proud enough and we're getting lots of interference from the battery, or maybe the antenna is not cut to the proper length, so it's a bit off. I was using my Fat Shark HD3s with LaForge modules, and of course, like I said, there wasn't much signal blocking going on out there. We're close in. We don't have a lot of leaves on the trees. We don't have about the only interference we're going to get is from residential Wi-Fi, and that's going to be relatively minimal out there because of the distance between our houses. I think if you want to get into micros and you don't want to build, this is a perfectly good kit, and you'll have lots of good times. I do think it needs a bit more tuning. For me, I felt like the yaw was especially sensitive, but the pitch and roll was not matching that sensitivity, so we probably need some more P on pitch and roll. I also noticed with the wind that when we went to lower throttle, we would get some movement, so we probably need to increase I on our axis as well. I think that pretty much sums it up. If you have any questions or comments, please leave those in the section down below, and thanks for watching.